Okay, call the meeting to order. Planning Board, June 13, 24. We have a quorum. We have 4 or 5 members here. Anybody online? Oh, we're not expecting John. Right, okay. Seeing that there's nobody in the audience for citizen comments, let's jump into the application. Go for it.
Want me at the podium?
Sure, yeah. You'll get on the microphone that way.
I gotcha. Well, good evening and thank you for having me once again. Here on behalf of David Starr with Gartley and Dorsey, here on behalf of Shane Johnson with a contemplated subdivision that will hopefully, if approved, will result in him getting back a parcel of land he didn't intend to sell or hadn't hoped to sell. I know in the pre-application meeting, I kind of gave a summary of how we got there. In the interest of time, I can go through that again if you need be, if not.
I still find this whole thing very confusing. I've gone through the drawings and I just don't understand this.
May I approach with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
plan? All right, yeah, all right. So what originally, we'll fast forward before any of these lines existed. Shane Johnson owned this piece, this piece of property came out up all the way out and back down. That's what he bought, one contiguous piece of land. Because there were 2 principal dwellings on that one parcel of land, he was allowed to split that lot and create 2 non-conforming lots, or 2 lots that were as conforming as possible, but as the ordinance allows, again, because there were 2 principal dwellings. So in light of that, he created this parcel that he sold to Longfellow, this what was it, 1.89 acre parcel, and then retained this odd shaped piece that included all of this here.
Why was it 1.89 and not 2 acres?
The ordinance only required 80,000 square feet, which is 1.84 acres, so that's why we went 189 instead of 2. Yep. Met the minimum without giving. Exactly, yep, yep. So like I say, that was one sale. Then Shane mistakenly thought, because this CMP line effectively bisects his lot, he thought that CMP owned this strip in fee, meaning their ownership separated his parcels so they were no longer contiguous.
That's what in fee means?
Yes. That they don't just have easement rights, that they actually own the land.
Okay.
So thinking that and talking with his attorney, he said, well, the subdivision statute talks about contiguous land in the same ownership. Well, if this in fact had been owned in fee by CMP, this and this would not have been contiguous. And the significance of that is he could sell this and own this separately without triggering subdivision. So with that in mind, he said, can you survey this piece for me? So when I was contracted to do the survey.
Wait, can I stop you right there?
Absolutely.
Survey which piece?
This odd shaped piece here, because he wanted
Because he
to
wanted
now
to
sell
this
that.
to Timberlake and Taylor.
Correct. Or he didn't know who at the time, but was going to put it up for sale. With the
So-
idea that he was retaining this because they were separate tracts of land, non-contiguous parcels.
Okay.
However, when I dug into the research, I discovered that CMP in fact didn't own this in fee. This was merely an easement, meaning Shane owned the underlying land and therefore this parcel was in fact contiguous. So the sale of any portion of that contiguous parcel would result in 3 parcels and therefore trigger subdivision. He had already gone under contract to sell this before he discovered, or I discovered this and made him aware of that. So at that point,
Where's that information hiding at the courthouse on the deed? I mean, why was it
It's a
not
lawyer's
raised to
fault.
the lawyer?
The lawyer should have picked that up.
I think so as well. I mean, it took me 2 minutes of reading the deed that said it's an easement. And then I called Shane and said, you got a problem. If you sell this piece, you'll create an illegal subdivision. So these folks were desperate. They wanted to buy because interest rates were changing. They had a fixed period of time where they had to close this sale or it was going to go away. Shane wasn't sure when he was going to get another deal. So what they did is he said, look, I'll sell you everything at the same price if you'll agree to, if I, after I sell this, go and get subdivision approval, will you convey this back to me? So that's what brings us here, is Timberlake and Taylor bought everything, but they were only expecting to buy this. Shane had to sell them everything or lose the sale, because if he hadn't sold everything, he would have created an illegal subdivision.
And they're not related?
And that's what I said. He said, I'm taking a chance. They don't have to do this for me. They've agreed to do it for him, and they've got a purchase and sale agreement, and after they close, they sign the purchase and sale agreement saying we agree. I mean, he could have been, left holding the bag. They easily could have said, once that ink was still wet, said, sorry, we got the best of you. We're gonna keep all this for the same price, but they,
The CMP, so they have just power lines there?
yes, there's a transmission line with it.
So CMP doesn't own any of that. They just
They have
put
an
it
easement, yeah, in perpetuity. They have easement rights.
in perpetuity.
Yes,
So that can never change.
correct.
Anything.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I guess unless they revert those easement or relinquish those easement, right? But
So what becomes his access to that property
this right of way here.
that was created when was that created?
Well, good question. It hasn't been. This section of the easement has not been created. When this lot was split, this 30-foot easement burdening the Longfellow parcel was created. So this section of the easement, and only this section of the easement, exists right now
To whose benefit?
to Timberlake and Taylor for their entire parcel. They have the benefit of this easement.
Why did they need it? Because they had access.
They got a railroad track here.
No, but here,
They don't need it, but that's the way Shane set it up, so that they'd have. And part of that reasoning was just to provide more opportunity down the road when a driveway were to go in, so they weren't pigeonholed into this narrow strip. They gave them a little more flexibility to work around.
Oh, because they want to be able to cut this up again in the future and sell that land, and have a separate driveway come out.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know. They haven't.
that's a very curious lot configuration, this one here, that they bought.
I agree.
I mean.
No argument whatsoever.
And then they were gonna, he wrote into when they transferred this deed, the first one to
Yes.
Longfellow. He put in this
That is
easement here,
correct.
going back to which lot?
All he sold was this, so that easement only runs from Route 220 to this back line,
To their benefit.
to their benefit.
But why would they need that benefit if they had that?
They don't need it, but just because you don't need something doesn't mean you can't have it, right?
There's options.
Yeah, that was the idea, is just leaving him flexibility, not knowing what was gonna happen with the rest of this land.
And then what is this here?
So now the proposal is to, if this moves forward, Timberlake and Taylor, when they convey this piece, in addition to granting Shane these rights, they're gonna grant him an easement over this strip. So effectively, he'll have an easement over that 80-foot strip, narrowing up to about 50. It's where he could construct a driveway for access out here.
Hi, I'm Steve Longfellow.
How you doing?
Oh, neighboring, so-
And
Okay.
then, do you want to come up and look?
I
You
love
might
it,
as
thank
well.
you.
Yep,
Yeah, here, go ahead and just take a picture.
you wanna spin that around?
Okay, so Pine Tree Real Estate is an LLC that is owned by Taylor and Timberlake.
Yeah, it's owned by Shane
Thank you.
Johnson. So this is to be conveyed,
Back to him.
yes.
For $1?
Well, yeah.
Yes.
They're just gifting it to him?
Well, because they never expected to be receiving it. They only received it because if they hadn't, he would have created an illegal subdivision. So that's the deal that they struck up, and they agreed to
Wow.
it. Yes.
But that.
This is more of a risk than I realized.
yeah.
The Longfellow easement,
Yes,
that hasn't been created yet, or it has been created?
has. When this deed was executed, the parcel was conveyed subject to this retained easement.
Well, I didn't realize that.
Are you Longfellow?
I am, yeah, I'm Steve Longfellow.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, how are you doing?
Eric Starr.
You'll be easy to remember with the t-shirt.
Yeah. Right out here.
Well, you didn't realize that there was
I didn't know. I didn't.
Well, your lawyer explained that to you?
Is any of this gonna affect Steve?
All right,
Yeah.
Well, and there's
Okay.
the, I thought I had a copy of that. It's in the packet, the boundary survey of that 1.89 acre parcel.
Doesn't seem right.
actually, is it, I don't have a copy here. I thought I did.
Of the
The
deed?
survey of just this parcel, because that was the first project that I was asked to do by Shane.
What was the
And that easement should show up on the.
Correct.
On the survey.
That's the whole thing. Shoot, I think I printed. No,
What was the?
there it is,
This
right
one?
there. That's the one. So,
Oh, thank you.
yes, so that, see, that just shows the parcel created with the easement
Okay.
retained.
All right.
And if you look at your deed on that was placed on record,
Yeah.
it does contain the language about accepting and reserving, so. I'm not sure
Yeah,
why that
I-
wasn't made clear to you
It
folks.
may just be that I'd forgotten it at this point, so, yeah.
I imagine things have been confusing.
I think that's probably fair.
That's what I thought. I thought at least this strip was retained for a driveway down the road, but I didn't realize it had 30 feet on my property.
Steve, do you have any concerns about all of this?
Um,
For you and Alicia Robitaille? You have guys have any concerns about what's going on?
Robitaille?
Yeah, she's, across,
Oh,
and
Where is she?
Turner and Robitaille.
About
oh,
there.
We can't
Thank
keep
you.
going.
yeah, I don't, to be honest, I haven't met them yet. I'm just still learning what's going on really. Yeah, I just,
Yeah, so you don't
yeah.
even.
yeah, this is the first I've heard of, all this stuff. But
Wow.
yeah, I met Shane. He's a nice guy, when he sold, but yeah, I haven't heard of this stuff.
So what is his intent to do this with it? He's back here?
I don't think he has
Develop
any immediate plans for it, other than seeing if he can get a standalone, building lot that could be sold as such or developed, with a single family residence at some
15
point.
acres?
Yeah.
It's so dividable, isn't it, technically?
Technically, yes,
Under the 5-year rule, would have to wait another 5 years. before
or
it was
go
otherwise.
through on another subdivision, yes.
I'm sorry, was that?
If Shane was to split that lot up within 5 years, then he has to come back for another subdivision review. Outside of that 5 years, he could just do one split.
He could split it in one, so just two,
Once.
right,
Right.
right, okay,
And then in
After 5
another 5 years,
right.
so on and so forth. But like I said, as far as he doesn't have any, at least he hasn't expressed to me any immediate plans for it, other than getting back what he had hoped to retain all along.
Well, yeah, I had really hoped to retain it because when he sold it, he thought he was selling the whole lot.
No, what he advertised and what these folks
Actually bought,
agreed to buy was this.
because he thought the rest of it was.
Because he
contiguous.
thought he could retain this and only sell this. That's why he marketed this. It wasn't until I said to him, Shane, you can't do that. He thought he could, because he
Yeah.
thought that this was owned in fee. And when he talked to his attorney, I don't know if the attorney didn't look into it or what, but the advice his attorney gave him is, yes, if that splits the parcel, you can sell this and keep this.
Well, all the attorney had to do is read the deed.
I,
I don't know.
well, like I said, he was lucky that the folks that bought this are willing to work with him, because he could have either he'd still own the whole thing and would have lost the sale, or he would have never have an opportunity to get this back. They, like I say, graciously, when he told me about it and he went to them and he said, they agreed that if I can get subdivision approval, they'll convey it back. So here we are. That's, and that's what I said. That's remarkable. I
He
said.
could
that
have
they-
gone the right route, which is just avoid the sale he had, get the subdivision done, and then remarket the piece. I mean,
Well, the issue with them was they would go away as buyers
Well,
at that
I
point.
mean, right now, there'd be 10 other buyers.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
so, I mean,
Well, it's probably not that easy to sell a piece of land right against the railroad tracks.
yeah,
That one was vacant for a while.
Yeah.
I think he had a hard time selling that one.
yeah. But your points are great, Eric. I don't disagree at all. I'm just here because this is what they have created in trying to move forward. So but yes, I mean, I had a lot of discussion about, options before this actually closed, and this is the route he wanted to move forward with, because they agreed that if after the sale, he could get subdivision approval, they'd deed it back.
And so as far as the lot goes, it's very hard to read the habitat maps or the wetland stuff. It's just black, brilliant blobs. Anything we need to know?
There are wetlands on the majority of this piece here. I didn't see habitat, but just they're mapped as wetlands. I didn't see them as wetlands of special significance or habitats. Does that
I-
concur with your findings, Matt?
I did see how it is similar to the beginning with habitat. I'll pull it up on the screen in just a minute, but. Yeah, and unfortunately, I think when you sent the copies, they weren't color coded or anything. They came out black and white. So it's gonna be a bit hard to see, but I did see what beginning with habitat marked for wetlands. And it does show up for quite a bit of it just before it hits the CMP line.
So perking isn't an issue because there's a house attached to this lot.
Correct. We did get a perk site. Actually, Wayne Ludwig did it. I got it yesterday. He did perk out here. That's correct. And that would be on this lot. This has an existing septic field. The Longfellow lot has an existing septic field. And I think, are both of those new? This one was, did Shane
Yeah,
do both
I
of
believe
those?
they're
Just-
both about the
that's
same
what-
time.
Yeah, that's what I
Yep.
thought.
Do you know if the Longfellow plot has any wetlands?
There may be some that it's hard to say exactly where that boundary is on the scale of that map. I wouldn't be surprised if the back edge of your property had some wetland on it as well.
Got it.
Now, as far as the drive or access drive and whatnot, if more than 4,300 square feet of wetlands are impacted with the construction of a driveway, that would necessitate a permit with DEP. If they're under that threshold, that's exempt and you can disturb up to 4,300 square feet without the need for a permit. So that could be
as it
reviewed.
stands now, there is a right of way, the legal right of way that he has just on your property, just on Longfellow property, right? He doesn't have a right of way yet
Correct,
on Timberlake,
Mhm.
correct.
because there was,
Hmm.
I'm.
Well, because this is all one right now, right? That right of way wouldn't exist until this lot is permitted to be divided.
And the right of way that exists there
Mhm.
on his property, that is the beneficiary of that easement is actually
Timberlake and Taylor.
Yes,
Timberlake, right?
yes. It's a pertinent to their, but it was
So-
retained by Shane at the time of the sale for
For-
Longfellow, and it's a
for them.
pertinent to. And it's, yeah, but it's a pertinent to the Timberlake and Taylor parcel in its entirety.
And then, but they don't, and they're not planning on transferring that back to Shane.
I know they are gonna give, as it turns out, and Max, I'm sure we will get to this. When this lot was divided, like I said, these lots that were created are non-conforming, but they were approved by the town and they were allowed to create these non-conforming lots because of the two principal structures. However, the road frontage requirement on those, because of the land use district, is it's commercial 1A,
Yep.
correct, Max, which requires 400 feet of road frontage, neither of these lots have that. The significance of that is if you burden a portion of that with an easement, you've made the effective road frontage less or made that lot more non-conforming. So the access, in order to not make this lot more non-conforming, the easement isn't gonna run all the way, and this is something Max and I discussed the other day, the easement will stop short of Washington Road so as to not burden. And then they can come in and just turn, so they'll only have to use the first few feet of that and then get down into here. Is the thought. Well, ideally, Shane, would like to come in through here. But Max, your comment in your email to me, right, was that we can't do that, correct?
Doesn't it make the lot frontage shorter by moving the driveway entrance?
Well, we're not changing the frontage, we're not changing any of the easement rights, that all exists as it is, and it isn't going to be altered by this.
So what does that whole driveway shift do for, what, I don't understand why the need?
Well, if this easement was not here and that we were just going to burden the Timberlake and Taylor parcel by an easement here.
Yeah.
That would reduce the effective road frontage of that parcel. Is that
Yeah.
a fair way to characterize that, Max?
Yeah, so
What?
Of whose parcel? Oh, there.
The Timberlake and Taylor
So
parcel.
can I stop y'all? Why, we need 400 feet of road frontage to have a driveway, why does any of this matter? There's only 50 feet there.
So-
Right away is different.
right, so it So when the initial split happened, it was allowed because two principal buildings, and this is a statewide thing. A non-conforming lot can be created if there's two principal structures and it's being split as non-conforming, as conforming as you can make it. That's unfortunately what could be done with that property. The problem has been a rear lot is being created. And yep, it's that one that's beyond the CMP line. So for a rear lot, because it doesn't have immediate access to a road, there has to be some access point to it. And our ordinance says that if you're creating that type of access, it can't take away the road frontage of a lot, so it makes it non-conforming. So if I,
Can't take away the road frontage of a
Right.
lot.
It's already.
What
not-
can't take away the road frontage?
the easement that's being created, if it's an official, if it's an actual road being created, then it solves it because it's a road, it's creating new road frontage for the other parcels. And then in the non-conforming article, if this is taking, you can't make a non-conforming article more non-conforming. So trust me, this has not been the best application I've wanted to deal with. I'm told that does many times to relay that to Shane.
Why do they need, why do they need a 90-foot wide right of way?
Well, I guess the short answer is they don't. There's nothing that necessitates that. It was more about flexibility in when you actually get into putting something in there, the wider the easement right is, the, you know, more
90 feet is pretty
flexibility.
wide. I mean, I mean, when you add those two things together, it already has. They already have the easement on your property and now they gotta add another 57 feet. More. Of more easements, which, you know, creates what could be technically a road. I mean, a real road. I mean,
Well,
sort of thing.
he
I mean,
has
I know-
options for, he doesn't have to be like this, it can,
Yeah, well,
nice road.
That was the thought, but behind him retaining this was to allow flexibility when and if a driveway were to go in. You know, to be able to meander in and not necessarily be pigeonholed right into that 50-foot strip. That was the rationale, at least as explained to me, and why he retained those additional easement rights over your parcel is.
So that's a done deal on that property, so. Getting that additional easement, so. It's already
Well, no, it's not a done deal. They haven't gotten that
Two
easement yet.
easements.
Correct. There's
that,
a
That easement is-
30-foot.
This is one easement.
yeah, but this.
The 30-foot easement through Longfellow is that's in his deed already.
this
But
is-
the other deed is hasn't been, that easement has not been executed yet.
This one has not been,
No, this one has.
that one.
This
is.
here is proposed,
The other one hasn't. The wide
Correct.
one, this 57-foot wide one is not it's a proposed easement. It's on an easement yet.
Right, but this one's already exists in space, and what else would you do with that? Little pork chop?
I mean, the other thought is. It's a little more limiting, but if you just connect the dots here. And don't burden this with easement, just have easement here, but then he's forced into staying on the southerly side of Longfellow's property in that easement if you do that, whereas if he has easement rights here, he can come in and get off of the Longfellow out of your property and down into this strip. Ideally, he'd come in here if it weren't for these lots already being non-conforming and this easement making it more non-conforming, we wouldn't even be talking about that. It's a necessity at this point because of the non-conforming issue in the ordinance. He has to come in here and go there, otherwise they're gonna make this non-conforming road frontage more non-conforming.
Wait, he has to come in across the
Here.
Longfellow property? Why?
Correct,
Yeah,
Because he can't, because of this, he can't make it nor non-conforming. They can't actually sell an easement for that much of the property.
correct.
That is.
Oh,
this
yeah,
doesn't-
this is part of this law.
Because
that
it's
doesn't-
part of that lot,
And
correct.
And it would
makes
reduce the
this-
road
it makes-
frontage.
Correct.
It makes it more non-conforming.
Make
Yes.
what more non-conforming?
His road frontage.
This one,
Whose road frontage?
Timberlake.
Timberlake and Taylor, they have two sections of road frontage, Timberlake and Taylor.
And
This
if- and if
small
they-
piece and this piece.
And if
you-
they give that whole section out for an easement,
Mm,
then they'll reduce the amount of road frontage they have, which makes it more non-conforming.
They are proposing giving the whole thing
No,
away.
they're not.
Well, now, we were initially until I talked to Max and Max said, you can't do that because so what we're proposing is this easement here will stop short of Route 220. So you'd have, right, it's gonna stop a foot short. As foolish as that sounds,
Yeah,
I don't like it either. But if it
What?
stops short of Route 220, it doesn't reduce the effective frontage of that Timberlake and Taylor parcel. So I talked to Shane about it. So why don't we do 20, 30 feet? He goes, if I need to stay a foot away, I'm gonna stay a foot away. So here we are. It's not what I would,
That puts a liability burden on, I must say, on Timberlake, because the reality is, if it's just a foot, people are gonna walk right over it, or they're gonna drive right over it, or they're gonna do whatever over it, and actually, that becomes a liability for them.
well, he can't because when he goes to this is a state maintained road. So in order to get a driveway or an entrance permit, he's gonna have to go to DOT. When he does that, DOT is going to make him provide right title and interest. So if there's a gap between his easement and the right of way, which there will be, DOT cannot approve an entrance for him here because he doesn't have the right to put one there. He will have the right to do it here. And then, once he gets beyond that foot, that driveway can come down into his easement. So I don't see the liability for Timberlake and Taylor because DOT is gonna they cannot approve an entrance here because he doesn't have the easement that connects to Route 220.
Is the electric company gonna allow an easement across their easement?
When they, then this isn't always the case, but when this easement was granted, it was granted subject to a crossing. And that's not always the case. So they have an appurtenant easement across the CMP utility line.
And why, when he created this, when Shane created this thing, why didn't he create the easement for Timberlake, across Timberlake? Why is he's doing it ex post facto now?
Well, no, because he owned that land and you can't have an easement over land you own. So when he sold to Longfellow, he still owned all this in fee. So he can't then have an easement over something he owns, right?
Well, when he sold them, he could have put into theirs, just like he put into Longfellow's an easement in theirs.
He was going to, but he
But
sold everything to Longfellow. I mean, he sold everything to Timberlake and Taylor.
Right, but he knew, but right then and there, that they'd made a mistake about this contiguous lot issue.
That's why he sold the entire parcel.
Well, so.
Right now,
You couldn't have put in
so-
an easement to give
Because they
Timberlake
own
and
it.
Taylor access to their own lot.
Correct. That's what he's doing now, because if this isn't gonna become in separate ownership, now you need an easement to get there. Timberlake and Taylor, as it stands, own this and all of this.
Well,
So what is?
I know it's a mess.
You're right, Connie, we should get paid.
This guy Shane, is he a developer, or is he, what is it?
I don't know if I'd call him a developer. He has bought and sold enough real estate. I'll put it that way.
Well, to miss that point, which is a very big point, the fact that that is not an easement, but there's not a ownership of an easement. It's kind of a big mistake. I mean,
So they don't care. So
Yeah.
that's why.
well, yeah, but even anyone who's, we should have read it himself. I mean, it's right there. I mean, it's gonna show up on the deed. It's gonna show up in the, it's gonna show up in the deed. It's gonna show up on the survey. It's gonna show up everywhere. It's like blaring in your face.
I don't know what
But it makes.
I don't know what to tell you. I found it. I mean, I don't know what to tell. I don't know why they didn't. I discovered it, Eric. Your point is a great one. It jumped out at me quickly when I looked into it. Why it got beyond them, I can't tell you. I can't speak to that. All I can tell you is this is what was put in my lap and what I was asked to.
So
say.
can I ask you back lots, what's the rule of thumb about the width of an easement road frontage for a back of lot property? I mean, what's the?
I didn't see a specified width in that 10.32 section. did you?
No, I can go grab the book to actually describe it, but I don't, it's 10.38, it's closer to the end of,
10.38.
I think it's around that one.
I was thinking 1032, 1038, something like
It's
that.
10:30, I
something.
know.
It ends at 10:36, so it's not 10:38. 10:32, rear lot access and frontage.
Okay, 32.
New rear lots proposed to be placed behind a legally conforming lot that has existing road frontage. Do we have any legally conforming lots?
No.
Well, yes, because they were allowed to, these are, I know they're non-conforming, but they're legal, right? Because they were allowed to be such, so.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so new rear lots proposed to be placed behind a legally conforming lot that has existing road frontage shall be deemed to comply with the minimum road frontage requirements if they meet all of the following. Lot conforms to all dimensional requirements for the district in which it is located, except for road frontage. Lot has access which conforms to the applicable requirements of the street access driveways, street road construction standards. Necessary right-of-way access to the necessary right-of-way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing road lot below the minimum established for the district in which it is located.
And this is what triggered this whole issue about the,
1 foot deal.
yes.
Necessary right-of-way to access the rear lots.
Can't become their road frontage.
I don't know if Max and I are completely on the same page with this.
Yeah.
I am of the opinion that if you create this easement that's 437 feet long, this has frontage along an easement, a private easement, and that in fact gives it its 400 feet of frontage. I'm not, I've had that interpretation in other towns. Waldeboro doesn't have, but the other towns that I've done that in, their ordinance says expressly your road frontage can be measured along a public or private right of way. Waldeboro's just says you have to have road frontage. It doesn't say public or private, so I think this is where.
Hmm.
And
Anyway,
then, and I checked with, John, I do see your hand up, but I just
That's
want to
okay.
make sure I
No, go
get
ahead.
this point. And I checked with MMA beforehand, just to be sure on some things, and they said, they agree with my perception that they're legally non-conforming lots that are gonna be further reduced with this right-of-way that's being created. And the application notes that a road is not being proposed right now. So in their opinion is should probably hold back until either the road is actually created or you just can't approve it.
Oh, who should hold back?
The applicant.
The applicant should hold back.
Yeah.
well, unless we do what we did and not make this proposed easement contiguous with Washington, I want to say Washington, yeah, Washington Road, Route 220.
Right.
But even
Which-
the easement they created for Longfellow is not legal technically, because they also reduced his road frontage.
But that was created as it was being split already. So that first split was fine because it was making, because of the two principal lots, it got split to be as non-conforming as possible. So they got that easement in when that split happened.
Yeah, it's
So-
already legal.
So it was legal when that first split happened
How was that? I'm sorry, how was that legal?
because it was taking the. We're going through a very weird part of the ordinance that I don't have to use that often. And Shane seems to keep knocking ticking every box in this list, so.
I agree.
So. in
Reason
the-
it's legal is because you bought it with this description.
Right,
Bought
well,
it with that, right? When you
So-
purchased it.
so,
And it was that lot, correct me if I'm, Max, that plan was brought to the town for review and approval before that division, correct?
right,
Yes.
By
So-
who? Just out of curiosity.
I think it's the code enforcement officer, because it doesn't specify anyone, so it doesn't go to the planning board, because it's not specified as the planning board, so it's code enforcement officer,
So who was that person?
this was 22 at the time, right?
I think it might have been Stan still. at
Yeah.
the
Would have
time,
still
I'm
been
not-
Stan.
I think so.
But it doesn't require a formal approval or anything. It's more of Stan looks at it and makes sure that it still complies with everything else in the ordinance. Now, yeah, I know. I should actually go ahead, Johnny.
Well,
You kept raising your hand.
I'm trying to follow this. I read all the details and I recall, 2 years ago when the town sent me to Bangor,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
Maine Municipal Association, the lawyers there said sometimes in a case like this, where it's kind of, there's riddled, obviously there's some discrepancies all over.
Mhm.
They said one can call for an ab ovo review,
What?
ab ovo, from the beginning or from the start review, to
Okay.
try to, because I don't want to prove something if there's some legal danglings here that I don't. So they said that's a reasonable approach if people feel they don't really understand, or there's some outlying parts of this that might be illegal or not legal or whatever. But they said an ab ovo review is a very real possibility.
And who
And-
conducts that?
I think the town, us, you just go over everything from the start to make sure everything that people are saying and written is in fact and legal.
Well, I think we're still wading through this, right?
Well, as far as, I think Max just attested that this division was in fact reviewed by the municipality and signed off on by who they thought was the permitting authority, being the CEO at the time. I've provided you the legal document that shows these are the boundaries and that's the easement, a copy of that deed. So I'm not certain to go back to the beginning, what would you be reviewing?
Well, Eric, what did you say that there was an obvious error, a legal error?
Of the
You
CMP?
pointed that out.
The
It's a
CMP item?
CMP thing.
Yeah,
So,
well, I mean,
if there's one error there, then how can you put your imprimatur on something?
It's not an error, it was that they didn't pick up on it.
It was an oversight by Shane and his attorney, not understanding that what he wanted to do
Right.
would have been illegal had he done it. He didn't do that. That's what brought us here. Because he didn't break the law, here we are, because he sold this all and now he's trying to divide it. That's why we're here. Everything he did was legal and above board.
So now to answer your question, go back to it. So in the non-conforming article, there is a section that's very rarely used, but it's pretty much saying, if you have a parcel with two principal buildings on it, and it's already a conforming lot, and you have the two principal buildings, you're allowed to split that land, and you have to make it as conforming as possible, so that you can still have the two lots created. And, you know, if there's some road frontage issues, as long as those two principal lots were created before the ordinance, then that's fine.
well, if that's the case, then if it was test to make those two lots as conforming as possible, those two lots should divide up the remaining land. Then they become more conforming.
Well, this lot is conforming with respect to area. The only thing it's not conforming with respect to is road frontage.
That
This
was,
lot is conforming with respect to area. The only thing it's not conforming with respect to is road frontage. And the reason for that is because of where the Route 1 commercial Route 1 commercial A district, it's like 1,000 feet off the center line of Route 1. So you've got a bunch of residential property that's zoned commercially, and that commercial Route 1A zone requires 400 feet of road frontage, which is
Otherwise, it would be 200, right?
correct.
Yep.
Yes,
So
yes.
this- sorry, again, this is commercial road frontage here.
It's in the commercial, yes, Route 1, Route 1A
You're in that
commercial
zone,
district, yeah.
yeah.
Just
Okay.
because of its proximity to Route 1, even though
Right.
it's not
Right.
on Route 1. Now, interestingly, Steve, this piece here is in the rural
Oh,
residential. This is not commercial
okay.
because of where that offset from Route 1 falls. This piece is, right,
yeah,
rural.
that's wrong.
This is in commercial. So there's,
And
Okay.
if it's whatever is between I think it's the CMP power line and Route 1, that's the Route 1 commercial district.
And there's lots of houses there.
Well, then a lot of those houses were built before 2005, which is when we did the zoning difference.
How would this proposed new back lot be conforming if it doesn't have any road frontage?
Well, that's what the rear lot allows as an exemption, so that
Okay.
easements or a road would be created so that that's how you have your road frontage. and stuff.
Okay.
But you have to meet certain requirements, which Brendan was just starting.
Yeah, I've got some questions about 10.3 too.
Yep.
How this all works out. So 10.32.1, lot conforms to all, sorry, preface this.
Yeah.
We have to meet all of the 5 subparagraphs here in order for the rear lot to be conforming. And to override the need to have the road frontage. Correct?
Yeah.
That's the way that I read this. All right, so 10.32.1, lot conforms to all dimensional requirements for the district in which it's located, except for road frontage. It's a 15-acre lot. It's certainly large enough. Dimensionally, there's no problems with it. So that one is okay. 10.32.2, the lot has access which conforms to the applicable requirements of street access, driveways, etc. That paragraph. I don't know that one off the top of my head. And
that
how
might
does
be-
it comply?
Well, I think that's the section where you go, because there's not a width there. They asked the question about the width of the easement. That, I think, is where you find that, and I think that's where you're gonna find that
Yeah.
30-foot requirement. I think.
30 foot,
Yeah.
and that's why that right away was 30 feet.
So that's Article 9.
Article 9.2. Okay. Let's keep going through this and come
Yeah.
back to that later. 10.32.3, necessary right of way to access the rear lot does not reduce the road frontage of the existing road lot. I don't understand what a road lot is. Does not reduce the existing road lot below the minimum established for the district in which it is created. So,
Can I speak to that?
yeah, please.
So right now, the requirement is 400.
Right,
This does not have 400. So if you do anything that makes this have less than that effective frontage that it already has, it would make it more non-conforming. So if this easement were allowed to run all the way to Route 220, you'd be burdening part of the road frontage, therefore reducing the effective frontage. You're not changing the frontage, but what they could, when you burden part of your frontage with an easement, they're saying that reduces your effective frontage. For example, say you had and Max, jump in if I'm misspeaking, but
Yep.
say you had a lot 200 feet wide in a district where you had to have 200 feet of frontage and you wanted to sell a back parcel and burden, right, part of this with an easement, you couldn't do that because that 30-foot easement would reduce you, right, your effect. It doesn't change your frontage, but it makes your effective frontage 170. Does that make sense?
yeah,
no,
it does.
Yeah.
So your workaround is that the entrance will actually be on the Longfellow
Correct.
lot. Okay.
Because this is already
And the
legally
Longfellow
existing.
lot has enough frontage
No.
as it is?
No. they
No,
allowed
but this
that
easement
because-
already exists.
Because the easement
This-
was
this is
granted
all
by,
done.
When it was created, that
Totally done.
by the,
Done and approved.
But-
if this
Stan.
easement didn't exist, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
Because then granting a new easement, right, if we were creating this easement now, if this didn't exist, it would be reducing the effective frontage of this piece.
Am I correct in understanding that that should not have been allowed to happen?
I think not. I don't think so either.
No, because
Because there isn't 400 feet there, right?
no,
It's.
but that 30, we're
Neither
talking
is it
about
a
the
commercial
30-foot one. But that first that northern 30-foot one. That was,
Yes.
that was created when that first split happened, where the goal was trying to make them as conforming as possible. So the easement was still fine to be there at the time because that's what they just tried to do, make it as conforming as possible.
In my mind, that would have made, adding an easement would have made it less conforming.
I
Exactly.
don't,
Well, what
I
do you gonna
can't-
do?
Yeah.
about it?
yeah, I
Well,
can't.
What are you talking about?
I'm just trying,
And no, I.
because we can't,
understand.
because we can't allow the rear lot unless all of these things get met. So I'm just trying to make sure that that.
Well, one thing for sure, if they do allow that, if they
Yeah.
allow the 30-foot as being something that's grandfathered in because it was done at the sale of the Longfellow piece, then I don't think that we should allow the additional sort of makeup thing with 1 foot, stopping short of the road. That should not be allowed. And they should have a 30-foot easement going all the way back to this rear lot, period.
And as long as there's some provision in the ordinance that gives you the authority to prohibit them from having an easement there, I would agree, but I don't think. I don't think there's anything in the ordinance that allows you to say, we're just not gonna let you.
Right, but
Right.
that clearly kind of goes around the law, letter of the law by dropping it 1 foot short of the road.
Well, where do you draw that line? 2
Right.
feet, 5 feet?
Okay,
Well,
well.
see, but if that's the case, I would vote against the subdivision. I just said, okay, the
But
subdivision.
DOT's gonna look at this and this is where they're gonna say, approve a driveway
not.
permit. Or not.
Or not, right? That's a risk that Shane is taking as well. You approve the lot and he goes to DOT and DOT says, guess what? We're not gonna approve an entrance here. That risk still exists, right? So he could end up with a lot that has a legal right of way to it that they won't permit a driveway entrance off 220, right? There are no guarantees that DOT will grant that. And then if he ends up proposing to impact more than 4,300 square feet of wetland, he runs a risk that DEP may also say, we're not going to permit your driveway. So even if this gets approved, there are no guarantees that you're ever actually going to be able to construct a driveway to get from A to B.
Okay,
Yeah. And that's,
all right.
I know we've been talking so much on this one item, but to get back to an earlier question on wetlands and identification, I do have the map right up here. So this is what you do have on your maps that Shane provided showing the national wetland maps. I don't really have to show the boundary because you have the CMP line right there.
Yeah,
So what beginning with habitats identified ends about here, actually. So this isn't including in beginning with habitats, it's just this curve onwards.
you're saying their definition of the wetlands or
So,
their definition of habitat area?
so
What is
there's
that?
the two wetland maps that were provided, one
Right.
with beginning with habitat, one with the national wetland. I'm just clearing up the two that they are gonna look different. This one is the national wetland, that's just showing all potential wetlands. I think that's beginning with habitat you have right there. And beginning with habitat one
Oh, it is.
ends here, which is still the back of the property.
So you're
Which,
saying that this right of way, this where you plan on putting a road in is wetlands?
I'm not planning on having it go through there, but that is
Yes.
what I'm seeing here.
There are
There's-
wetlands there,
there's-
yes.
Cause there's no other way to really get through it other than the railroad, or if they somehow came through the CMP line here.
So who has to, if it's wetlands, or who has to,
It would have to go,
DEP permit.
DEP would likely be the ones to talk to. And that's been my bit of my concern. I'm sorry if I'm speaking out here, but
No, it's good.
that there are the two state items that I feel if either of them say no, that kind of stops the permit right here. So I'm wondering if it could go to those two, get some initial thoughts, but
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
In the DEP map, can you like give them that and see how they might rule if they came down and like did a site visit?
They wouldn't be able to say anything because there's no construction plan, so there's no way of them knowing what the total area is that's gonna be
Right.
disturbed.
Correct.
And is that a current map? Cause I saw something here, it was like 7 or 8 years old.
I don't know how often, let me check to see if this is enough.
So
I
if they're
think
putting in
that's
a
the
road,
same.
they'll still need a construction plan for that, even though it's obviously gonna disrupt the wetlands.
You can disrupt wetlands, like it's not against the law to disrupt wetlands, you just have to follow the rules.
The permitting threshold for impact, any impact above and beyond 44,300 square feet necessitates a permit. If you're impacting less than 4,300 square feet, that's exempt. You don't have to submit a
Well, how many
permit.
square feet is this?
Depends on the width of the driveway, and so if he puts in an
Well, if it
8-foot
was-
driveway or a 10-foot driveway and you go 400 feet, you're at 4,000. So I think it's
Likely.
likely that he's gonna trigger that permitting
No
threshold and
question.
DEP is gonna have to review it. And I've made, Shane aware of that.
Unless it's-
Can't they review it first before they come to us?
Well, they need a proposal to review. So if he, at this time, he's not proposing to construct the driveway, when he proposes to construct the driveway, that's when he'd have to go to DEP if he's gonna trip that threshold, which
Very-
I don't see how he would.
Very quickly, the last time this map was updated was March 2022.
Oh, so it's really current.
And it's building right next to the railroad tracks. It's like already a pile of gravel there. Interesting.
Well, I'm wondering if that was the wet, it was
Sure.
150 years ago. I'm sure there were wetlands where the railroad is, right? And they
Absolutely.
just filled them and
And it
ran
came
the
across-
railroad
came
through
across
and exactly, I would, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just, I would suspect.
So is this all to avoid having to use as much of the easement on my property?
Yes.
That's the whole
He-
goal of this thing?
He wants to come in. He doesn't want to, he would rather come in right here and not be on your property.
Yep.
It's only
Okay.
out of necessity that he has to come in here.
Okay, so I mean, if he had this easement on the 30, if that was sufficient. And he just had that all the way through, this whole dispute would be moot.
Well,
No.
I guess
No.
if the planning board takes the position that they're not gonna allow an easement here, then he's gonna be forced into
He's gonna be
being on
forced
your
to do that.
property the entire way.
Okay, so the
Or
only
as you
reason,
said, we can't, that's not our decision.
I don't know
Although I
that.
would vote against it if they were gonna skirting the law, but this thing by putting a easement there that stops short of a 1 foot from the street, because I think it skirts the law.
I think it complies with the law.
Well,
I didn't write the
okay,
law.
okay,
I
that's-
mean.
We've already been,
Yeah.
we're already gonna soon hit an hour on just this one issue, so.
Down that road.
I
I'm
don't
exactly-
think it's best case scenario, Eric. I see your point. I'm just saying we're trying to find a way to make it work with what we're faced with, right? It's not what Shane wanted to do either. He'd much prefer to go here, but because of the non-conforming provision in the ordinance and that back lot, 10.3, that section, he can't do so at this point.
Well, I think to your point, John, if they'd come to us right in the get-go and propose this, would we have agreed to let him do this?
What's the point of the get-go, before the
Well,
storm is sold?
No, because now he's coming back, saying, well, I'm an injured party here and I want you to resolve it for me. Whereas
Who might be the injured party?
Shane, he claims he didn't, for whatever set of reasons, his lawyer, whatever, he is out of not being able to market or use a piece of his property because they misread the deed. So now he's coming back and saying, well, now I want you to help me correct that. And that's not really our job. And I think to your point, would we have agreed to let them subdivide this property if they come to us right from the get-go and say, this is what I'm going to subdivide this into 3 pieces or 4 pieces or whatever it was going to be? Would we have agreed to do it? Given the wetlands, given all the other issues that this is confronted with. I mean, and
I think
I
I
don't
would
know
have.
I don't know the answer to
I
that.
think I would have. I think there's plenty of, what we already know that these are non-conforming, so, like I said, at what point do you want to go back in time? But there's plenty of land, there's plenty, anyone who's buying it or looking at it is gonna see the issues that we're developing if they want to develop it.
May I ask, say I hadn't discovered that this was an easement and he had sold this because no one picked up on it and created an illegal subdivision. It was discovered and we were coming to you like Heidi did after the fact. Would you feel differently? It's a question. Would you feel differently about, I mean, the only difference between that scenario and this one is fortunately, before he created an illegal subdivision, it was discovered. And he's now coming with this, it kind of still after the fact, but not really, because right now this is all one and this is just being contemplated.
I do find it sort of curious that the party that's trying to subdivide the lot doesn't own the lot.
No, they do. These folks own it. Shane's interest is in a purchase and sale agreement, so
Oh, so Shane isn't. the
Shane
applicant here?
no, well, Pine Tree Realty is Shane.
So,
They're the same.
He is the applicant and his interest to do this is through a purchase
I
and
see,
sale agreement.
okay,
and that's his proof of.
Right title
having
interest.
Right title interest
Got
to
it,
this.
okay. Okay, can we finish with 10.32 so we can find out if any of this is even possible?
Yeah.
Okay. So 10.32.4, the portion of the new rear lot which abuts the rear lot line of the front lot shall extend a minimum length equal to the minimum road frontage required for the land use district in which it is located and extend back a distance equal to the required front setback. So your front setback in the zone is
Well, it's rural once we get into there, so it's 200.
200 feet. Okay, so obviously the lot is more than 200 feet. So the second part of this is met. The first part, the portion of the new rear lot which abuts the rear lot line of the front lot shall extend a minimum length equal to the minimum road frontage required for the land use district, which is 400 feet, right?
Mhm.
So this line is 341 feet. This line over here is 446 feet. So which line is the front line? Is it all the
I
front
think
line?
That's all the front of the lot.
Why is he keeping this part?
I was about to say,
Why doesn't?
isn't the
this go on?
CMP line supposed to be separate? Or is
It's an easement.
it's an easement?
This is
Okay.
easement, so the property lines here, these are easement rights. So CMP got 2 different conveyances here. They got an easement, and then years later, they came in and bought a strip and fee that adjoins their easement, right?
What does
So
that
thi-
have to do with what we're
No,
talking
nothing.
about?
I don't think it
No,
does, but
it
that
doesn't.
was what you
So,
were asking
yeah,
about.
no, because Barbara just raised the thing as well that Dice all a lot like there, yeah.
Actually, well, can you call that line, this rear line, or even that, as part of his property when it actually has an easement on it?
Yeah, I mean, the lot line is the lot line. I mean, the easement is not a lot line.
No, but. I don't know.
I mean, to me, this is the, you know, if this is the front, this is not the front. So why would this be the front?
That's a good I mean, I don't know. Is it, what is it if not part of the front line?
I don't know how backlots work.
Well, well, and let me,
I'm learning right now.
how much of an angle does it have to be? Like, if this angle were much more subtle, would we be having that, right? Just because if it's more, of a- I don't, you know, I don't know. This all seems like the front line, sideline, rear line, but maybe Max could speak to those
Well,
definitions.
That
in the
entire
ordinance.
sideline there is completely consumed by the easement. It's not, I don't think it should be considered as being part of the property because it's got an easement on it.
I mean, the work, if that's the case, then
just
I think
grab
Shane
the
just
book.
conveys these folks another. Right? And we, if you,
Yeah.
if this, if what you're getting at is this is the only front line, if this is the front line that abuts the front lot, then I guess.
Cut it separately, cut it differently.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
But this is 400, over 400 feet.
Well, but,
That's 341, right?
well, 380, it's 340 and then 40 for the easement, so a total of 3.
So that's his front lot, and this is their front lot. This is 437.
This distance isn't point to point?
The total 391 is rebar to
Oh,
rebar.
391. I didn't see that there.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Well, maybe,
Yeah,
maybe,
50.
maybe Timberlake won't want to have that easement as part of their property.
But why did this go over to their?
Because
why
they,
isn't
maybe
what
because they
what
don't
is
want
that
it.
for?
That's the
This is
easement.
how they originally surveyed this lot.
Correct. What was originally going to be sold until he learned he couldn't was everything this side of the easement. That's what he told these folks
Oh.
they were gonna buy, and what he planned on selling them until I said, you can't do that.
I guess I got another question about this,
Yep.
though, related to what you're just saying. Where is the line of the easement? This looks like it's overhead.
Those are the
This is the
actual
actual line,
lines.
so the easement actually runs right to the
Correct.
property line.
Correct.
Okay,
That easement is 150, 100 feet.
okay, I see now,
Yeah.
right here.
That's,
Got it.
and that's the easement.
That,
Yeah,
yeah, so
right.
there was an easement and then they bought this strip in fee. But yes, the red or magenta lines are what demark the limits of the easement, yes. And the easement is concurrent with this property line or with this proposed property line. Because as it stands, this property line does not exist today. Right? We're proposing this property line. Right now, this is all contiguous.
So you
right?
could propose any property line. You could propose
This-
it so that it goes all the way across,
We could,
you know, you could propose it so that it doesn't have that easement in the front. Well, that wouldn't be changing the property line, but it's been changing, it wouldn't be an easement there.
I'm sorry, where, Eric, just, I don't.
This here, I object to
Yes,
that.
you
I object
could.
to that.
Yes, you could do something different here, absolutely. This does not exist. This exists. This is all proposed. These are proposed. So this line could be different. This easement here could be different, yes.
Okay, so what we're looking at is approving this and this lot, right? Is that what we're doing? No, I'm confused.
We're
Yeah.
approving the
Okay,
subdivision.
this-
We're approving the subdivision.
Yeah, two lots.
And the subdivision includes this, or does it, that's just a
No,
blank?
This is similar to what happened with Byler's Corner one.
Mhm.
That first split happened. It's not counted because that special exception that the state law has. But the
This
lot with the
and
two,
this?
yep, those two lots are the whole reason we're.
We're meeting,
review.
okay? Yes. to clarify.
I think you should go back to the drawing board
And do what?
personally.
And do
I
what?
think, and change that. I mean, and get rid of this easement. It goes to the road.
And you
First-
recognize that puts more of a burden on Mr. Longfellow if we
Um,
eliminate
I
that.
just worry when you have a 90-foot easement there, the size of the rows that they can put in. And I think that's gonna have a bigger impact on Mr. Longfellow than having a 30-foot wide strip that they can put a 10-foot wide road on. He could put
If
he
there's
could put He could put a 30-foot wide road in there if he wanted to.
You could put a 29.99 foot wide
Yeah.
road on a 30-foot easement.
Well,
I
I don't
can
know.
also go back and ask for legal opinion on this easement item and how far back it is from the road frontage, because it might be as Dusty's saying, where it's just 1 foot off, or they may say it's otherwise. I don't know. Have you had this with other towns where this same problems happen?
This particular one is a new one for me.
Oh.
Yeah. Like I said, the part of the idea in granting the easement over that entire strip versus just a portion of it is, one, it allows, once you get in off of 220, the ability to get off Mr. Longfellow's property, and provides flexibility, not knowing what you might encounter. And like I say, it doesn't serve any real purpose with this other lot. And I don't know this firsthand. Shane has said that, these folks seemed excited with the idea that a driveway might come through, because at no expense to them, they suddenly have access to the back portion of their lot that right now there is none out there. But I'm telling, that's someone telling me and me telling you, so take that for what it is. I can't say that that's factual or not.
Have you reached out to someone from DOT yet about the access pointer?
I'm not.
based on the history here, I don't particularly have a lot of confidence in Shane and what he's doing or what he's competent to. I mean, I just think that he's. I don't.
Shane lives here. Doesn't live there.
I
That's out.
think he lives further up 220. Are they still living there? I'm not sure. Yeah. I don't know that he ever lived here, did he? I didn't think so. Yeah.
What would you like to see done?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out how, I'm wondering if I could. I'm wondering. I don't know. I want to go talk to these guys kind of and bring a copy of this to them and talk it out with them. I don't know if they understand all this either, because I didn't know all this
They,
stuff.
they're renters or,
No, they
They're
are
owners.
no,
Yeah.
they're the owners.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm curious, do they actually understand, what they're getting themselves into here?
I can't speak for them. I know that they signed a purchase and sale agreement agreeing to convey this piece with an easement. And I believe the purchase and sale refers to the survey that, the survey of this piece here. That
And
shows the
they
easement.
understood the idea that
They understand he's gotta get.
that easement can't go all the way to the road, and they understand all that stuff.
That's, this easement not going to the road is new as of yesterday, per my conversation with Max.
Because of the rear back lot.
Yes, exactly.
And then the other thing is that as Judy just pointed out, it doesn't conform, it doesn't meet the standards here because of that front line is not long enough. That's 400 feet.
I guess it would depend on what we decide is the front line.
Johnny,
I just guess, just going out, Steve, so this is just a for instance, but say they had to go to you for the easement, you could
Mhm.
just say no. You're not giving the easement, is that,
No.
I think
no,
I-
it's already
I think-
exists.
I think I've
Exists
already,
they've already got it, so.
I think it's,
Is it a
yeah.
done
It's in the
deal?
deed.
I think it's
So
a
you
done
already
deal
bought
for
it?
me.
Nothing that you could,
There's not really anything I could do other than propose something else, you know,
oh, no, I'm just saying.
but yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think I've got much to do. Much I can,
off the top of your
Anyway.
head, Max, do you know what the minimum right of way would be to put in a driveway? Minimum right of way.
Assuming we're talking
width,
about like a small one,
basic driveway.
We have one through our woods. It's a logging road right away. It's 50 feet wide, right?
So I'm looking at 9.2, which was referenced in 10.32, which we've been talking about. Your minimum right of way width for a minor private street is 36 feet. And I haven't had time to study this while we're talking here,
right?
but it occurs to me that this is a 15-acre lot back here, and if he intends to actually develop this,
He
and
could.
the only access is across the 30-foot right of way here, then he's got a problem actually putting in anything
Beyond
other
a
than maybe
single-family
a
residence.
single house in there.
I would
Right.
agree.
Minor what does minor private street mean?
It's just it's the volume of traffic that's going down.
Well, so that
Got it.
a driveway is not a minor private street.
No, so.
That's got more than one.
So low volume driveway is anything less than 25 vehicle trips, and when we're talking vehicle trip. One in, one out is counted as two. So 25 vehicle trips is a low volume driveway, minor private public street is a. Public or private right of way serving 3 of 5 wells.
Okay, so we got a 15-acre lot here, so in an area where we got, it's rural there. So the minimum lot size is 80,000 square feet.
Yep.
So you could cut that into 5 lots.
I think, like you pointed out, I think he's gonna be limited that he doesn't have sufficient width.
That's my point. If you wanted to cut this into 5 lots, you'd have to have a street, which would mean you'd have a 36-foot minimum
Correct.
right of way needed.
I
Which
think
would-
best case scenario, you could put a single family residence out there served by a driveway.
Yeah.
I don't think you have sufficient width to do a development out back there
And he couldn't,
in the right of way.
even if, so in the case that, so this part of my land isn't for that. In the case that I were to say, hey, we could come to agreement to have more easement on my land, he couldn't do that either because it would make it more non-conforming.
Correct.
Good point.
Correct.
Plus you wouldn't agree to it. Anyways.
Well, even if he did, he couldn't, right? Like,
Yeah, right, yeah.
because it would, well, he couldn't, it would reduce the effective frontage of
Right,
his
it
lot.
would.
So even if he wanted to run to Shane tonight and say, hey, I'll give you another 6 feet, he can't.
The only thing you could do that and make it populatable with how many units is to put a road there, which would increase the frontage of all the lots.
Just very quickly, at least if we're talking driveway standards and width, that's on 9-5. The minimum width of the driveway shall be at least 12 feet. Throwing that out there.
Well, so if you go
Sorry,
12
where
feet,
was that? Oh, page 9 dash.
Page 9-5, it's 9.2.1. It's like 3 from the bottom.
Is there a maximum?
For
No.
driveway, no. No, it's just talking minimums. And, as the checklist, I mentioned that I'm waiting for the fire chief. The fire chief and EMS chief both said that they don't have a problem with the actual subdivision, but the one thing they want to just make sure is being discussed is how anyone would access that back lot, which I think we've been doing quite a bit of.
Yeah.
And it would get addressed during building permit stage, right? Basically.
I mean,
The
if you've got a 30-foot wide entrance. And as long as you're coming out to the street in a relatively centered manner where you can flare the driveway out to the road. Like, I don't see any reason why you can't get a fire truck down that.
For a single residence, you mean?
I think there are other circumstances that limit this. Like I said, I think best case scenario is a single family residence. And even then, when you look at the cost of the driveway getting out there, I think that, I think that's a tough sell for, it's gonna take the right person, I think, that's gonna wanna invest in that driveway and.
Just get a helicopter.
I mean,
Yes.
I would prefer that we just limit it to this 30 feet because then we're precluding him from doing anything other than a single family.
But didn't you say 36 was the minimum?
Yeah, he's already
No.
precluded because to get from here to here, he has to go through the 30. So I think that's already taken care of, Eric. I think he's already precluded with making multiple lots here because his access point has to come through that 30-foot right of way and you need at least 36 to serve more than one dwelling.
You know, but I just don't like this idea of this 1 foot.
Well, the other thing you could do is make that a condition of approval that this, cannot be further divided or something like that. Right, Max? Isn't that something that's within their discretion if they so choose to?
Yeah, and very quickly on the concern on subdividing anymore. That's right, it does have to have that 36-foot right of way split, so. Let's say they even go with this 1 foot off the road frontage issue. That means they're not gonna have 36 feet right off the bat, they're limited to that 30-foot easement at the road, they can't do that extra bit unless the neighbor now wants to come back and say, oh yeah.
Tell them 6 feet.
Yeah, and sell them
Except
6
you
feet
can't.
extra.
But he can't though, right? Because he would be making his lot more non-conforming at that point.
Yeah.
So I really
Unless we
think,
change the ordinance.
well,
and
that
all
would be the only, yes, that would be,
And then, yeah, you can get to conditions of approval noting how addition, say outside the 5-year rule. If it's split any further or any development has to happen, there has to be additional access considerations or anything like that.
Well, I still think he doesn't need the additional easement. I think I'm good with the easement that he's already created.
Well, I think given the circumstances, you kind of came up with the best thing you could do. on
yeah,
this
I,
plan.
it's. We were looking at what had transpired and where he wanted to go after, we were kind of limited with what. And the thing, I will admit, Max's email threw me, I didn't realize. That non-conforming, that threw us for, and Shane too, because the idea all along was to just go straight in off of 220. And frankly, if it hadn't been for that easement existing, I think he would have been out of luck.
Again,
So the way
again,
this
which is,
will be written, it will only be for access to this lot. It won't be a right for this lot to use. this.
Well, they own it, so they'll have a right to pass over that land because they own it.
What if
Subject,
they sold that?
they're gonna
so this-
retain ownership of this, subject to his easement rights.
Okay.
So because they own that strip of land, I don't know why they would preclude themselves from using and enjoying that section of land. It's possible, I guess they could make that an exclusive easement for him, but I don't think that was what anyone was intending. I think they were gonna maintain ownership, give him an easement to get there, and I think they were planning on being able to use and enjoy at his expense the driveway that he puts in to get, out into that back portion of their lot.
This part's 50 feet.
oh,
All right, should we go through the thing?
Probably so.
Really?
You sir, mine.
I'm sorry, this, is
Is
that
that mine?
I can't
You
remember.
know, it's the checklist.
Yep.
we can.
Oh, there was this one, I'm sorry. The only reason I'm thinking is, see how that one's in color and all the copies are in black and white? Usually my original is in color. You see how it is, right?
I mean, at the end of this checklist, we're gonna approve it or just, or not approve it? Is
I don't
that
know.
the case?
We'll see. Let's see what happens. We have been. Max has pointed out on a couple of occasions where we have chosen to not go through the checklist because. We had issues with the application, and then. When they fixed those problems. We would sit down and go through the checklist for the first time and discover. There's a half a dozen other problems that we never identified because we didn't actually. Do our job here and go through and review everything.
But just to answer the question, once you go through the checklist, you have the same choice as always. You may choose to approve, deny, or table if you believe more time is needed.
All right, let's do it. So conflicts of interest. Don't think we've heard about any conflicts of interest. Applicant has standing. We've already discussed that. Is the application complete? I think we're about to find that out. We don't have a findings of fact. So 3.5.1. Accepted by town office and submitted on town office forms. Note says confirmed by planner. Applicant information's been provided, property location and details are on the maps, verification of ownership, we have the deeds. Without covenant in the packet. Planner confirms fees have been paid. There's no construction costs because nothing is being proposed to be constructed. Project is a subdivision. Start and completion dates, there's no construction. All of the state, local, and federal permits have been acquired. Note says Newman's Bay allotment need a DEP permit for wetlands, as we discussed.
Did I include DOT on that as well?
No, you wrote DP, but
Okay,
yeah, we
well,
should
should
note
include
DOT also, yeah. Site maps are provided. I know here it says refer to SD1, which is what we've been talking about all night. Estimated water sewage, it's not really, pertinent here. Evidence site can connect to sewer. That's a sewer at least 300 feet away. I assume it goes up 220?
No,
It doesn't? Okay,
it's a weird, actually, I have the map right here.
perfect.
So, because we've been talking about this parcel the whole time. So the sewer is very funny when we get to 220. So
Of course it is.
it actually goes around the parcel to get to this pump station right here, and then goes through a force main out. So when I say 300, it's maybe.
Wait, how could it's gravity to the lift station and then it's force main out
Let me pull up, let me pull up the other.
uphill?
Thought it was pumped all the way. from
I
the village.
assume so.
Well, but they have,
Here,
they're.
They've got
They did do a
do
test.
a
I'm sorry, it's not the railroad, it's Route 1, it goes up. And then crosses the railroad right here to the pump station. And then it's a force, well, pumps, and then it's a force on Hope Road,
Got it.
not Hope Road, what am I?
Higher,
Higher road.
Higher Road, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, it just misses it here
Yeah,
and then here.
I don't think anybody's running the pipe that long. Okay, so HHC 200 form provided. That is this guy right here, is it not? Yes. So we have a acceptable perk test for the back lot, rear lot. Note says existing homes on septic, newly created lot has no septic proposed, but I think that that is an old note. Because there is an actual, well, actually, we don't have a septic proposed, we just have a perk test on, right?
Correct.
We don't
He found
decide
a spot,
yet, okay.
exactly.
Okay, vehicular and pedestrian traffic not applicable due to undeveloped lot. 3.5.2. Documents, we have a title block. We have conditions of approval. We have a signature block. Conditions, we have a conditions, right there, okay. Building and structure drawings, not applicable, no building proposed. No traffic information in item 7. Site map prepared by professional engineer. Stormwater erosion control plans, there's a waiver request here because there's no earth moving activities proposed in the plan. Technical and financial capacity, it's just dividing a lot, so there's no construction or financial capacity requirements to be met. Contours on map, contours are not provided. I think that's fine considering what we're doing here, just cutting up a lot. Fire protection provisions, the existing structures on Washington Road would use Washington Road for access. Then we create a lot of new driveway for access. That all makes sense.
Can I just ask a quick question? When this says, on the Longfellow lot and, this other lot. It says proposed septic field. Are they currently using the same septic field for the two houses?
No, at the time of that survey, they had staked out a new field, which has since been installed.
For both of you, they both have new fields.
Correct. I think that was around the time. I know this one was new. I thought he put one
Perhaps
on.
before
Yeah,
we
I think,
bought it.
yeah.
2022,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty recent.
Okay, so this is not, it's not a proposed septic. field
No,
anymore, it's
no,
actually-
those exist.
Okay.
And I think Max probably has permits for that. Do you recall? I assume.
Which
he-
one?
The two new septic fields on both of those dwellings.
Yeah, I couldn't make copies, I'm sorry, but I did note in the findings of facts that for previous permits, new septic systems were installed in August of 2022.
For both properties.
I had new septic for the one that's being split. I can go check the other property.
The Longfellow property. You had a new septic field, but
Yes, we did.
Yeah, I can check the Longfellow property.
okay.
Yeah, I was quite certain he did them at the same
I
time.
believe so.
Yeah.
Your 86 one?
Shane.
Shane,
Yep.
yeah.
He
he-
put it-
I
He-
can go
he
with check.
had a new septic field put in on both
Yeah.
parcels.
Sorry.
Okay,
All right, Article 7, buffer areas. There's a waiver request here.
what are we waiving? By that,
The requirement to buffer industrial and commercial buildings. Which does make sense. There's no building construction.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why we even really need to review Article 7 for this. Net developable acreage.
Let's not. Historic sites, that was looked at. Historic sites, archaeological.
None known, but I don't know that we actually, trying to think, did I know? I might have my one
Says the request has been sent.
to, that's right, haven't heard that, an email to,
Says what now?
It says the request has
Yeah.
been sent. for
Yeah.
the-
Oh, I'm looking at something else.
Yep.
And to answer your question on the
Hmm.
septic, it was installed August 17th as well, so. Both properties had a septic installed on. Or a permit applied on August 17th, 2022.
All right, all of this is related to construction. We're not doing any construction in Article 7. And basically the same thing with Article 8. So there's a waiver request here for stormwater management plan and erosion control plan. There's no development being proposed in this application.
and all of that will require whomever, be it Shane or someone who buys that, whoever does that will have to file for the necessary permits.
Yeah.
Be it DOT or DEP, wetland impacts.
Just in case. I probably should be. So 8.10 is asking for. River Brook stream and wetlands. We know that we have wetlands. It's just asking to identify this on the application, and I think that we have that information showing the wetlands. Flood zone, I presume this is not a flood zone at the top of the hill.
Actually, I should have corrected that because Dusty did provide a
The special
floodplain map that
flood.
shows that it's not. a
No,
flood
did you?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thought I did.
It
did.
it shows what, that it is not.
That it's not in a flood zone.
Yeah.
I'm gathering moving forward, that color applications might be preferable. No, I don't.
That would be helpful.
The town prints in black and white. We always did them in black and white.
For once, this wasn't my fault for being black and
Oh,
white.
really?
It's on me, I'll take full. And I'll be, the reason for that, I'll be, is they charge
Okay.
significantly more at the coffee shop to copy and.
Naturally.
But still.
But there are, yeah, some of these maps clearly would, I mean, those would be much better. for
Yeah, definitely.
Color.
It's,
I agree.
we've had problems with this in many applications. Yeah, obviously, it's not really a big deal here, but you know, when you're trying to like figure out what your setback distance is from a wetland line and everything's just a gray mess, it's kind of hard to understand. All right, 8.11 buffer requirements for water quality. This is not really pertinent because we're not doing any development at this point. Article 9, traffic impacts, proposal does not require an analysis because there's not that much traffic since there is no house or road. 9.2, street access and driveways. I think we've talked our way around that quite a bit. The yeah. 9.3, parking and loading, no buildings are proposed. 12.8.1. Well. So 12.8.1 just says you have to meet all the rest of the land use ordinance, which is what we are actually discussing right now. General lot requirements are met. Note says proposed sizes comply with minimum lot size. Monuments, Garley and Dorsey have installed monuments as they have surveyed.
Although I think I need to make a correction on that, because, do you mind just letting us?
So this section of the property was surveyed. The rest of this line and this line, those lines are based on the railroad survey. And this line, too, is based in part on the railroad survey, the central main power easement and, Stonewall evidence. This section of the property was not surveyed. These lines were not formally surveyed.
Do the monuments exist at the points?
Admittedly, haven't been out to those points to know.
Okay,
So I cannot say one way or the other.
we'll need to confirm that they exist. The requirement says monumentation is required by Maine Board of Registration of Land Surveyors, shall be installed at all road intersections, all corners and angles. And at all other subdivision boundary corners and angle points, as well as lot boundary corners and angle points. So if the monuments exist, then that is met. Exist. The only way of knowing would be to go out and survey it.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Well, and that was part of the discussion at the pre-app was,
right.
you know, is the accurate measurement here, here, and here? It's something that is going to be necessitated for approval, or is knowing that this is well in excess of the, you know, minimum lot size requirements, is that enough? Or not? And that's,
Button up against some people who probably did some pretty strong surveying.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not concerned about it.
I'm not a surveyor. I've taken a few surveying classes.
But it's right up against the railroad line and.
well, and we tied into this section, just so a little background on how I would have plotted these, is we were tied into the railroad survey for this section, so using it, using the geometry provided on their plan, I can quite accurately plot in these two boundaries.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
Right.
this one here that probably is the least accurate. That said, that position is, you know, reasonably accurate, such that, I mean, you know, I've done enough to know this line doesn't run through here. It's in that general location, but can I tell you that this is 1,595 feet long or 1,590.7?
No stone.
But you have an adequate amount of information to define the lot to satisfy the needs of the registry of deeds to, yes, fulfill the certain.
If we were doing a multiple subdivision back there, we might think differently, but it's destined to be a one-home property.
Yeah, in order to approve, we'd have to waive the monuments requirement.
Well, I propose we waive the monument requirement. Why? Because somebody building a house on that back lot. They're not going to be going over their neighbor's property. Most likely. It's huge.
Well, in any spot where they would be close, those areas have been surveyed and those are monumented.
Yep.
So the only points, unless someone's gonna be building right there, that would be the only reason why, which I guess is a remote
So
possibility.
it'd be up to them if they screwed up and built over, then, you know, there would be repercussions if someone's,
But isn't it, it's a requirement under subdivision.
but we can waive things because we can be reasonable about what expenses we're asking people to take on to use their property.
So what are we basing those lot lines on? Just a deed?
The existing survey of the railway.
So that in part, deeds in part, and there's, like I say, I forget what the dimension is, there's 107, 110 feet north of this test pit, there's rock wall that runs. That appears to coincide very reasonably with the current deeds. I haven't done enough to certify that rock wall is in fact the boundary, but it's suspicious.
All right. So in order to approve this, we'll have to do a waiver there. We'll do a motion here when we get to the end of this.
What's the waiver?
For the monuments, 12.8.3. Because the only portion of this that's been surveyed is
The railroad?
the
Front lots.
proposed lot in the front. Okay, water supply, note says Hatch well drillers indicated they do not see a problem with the new private well. Fire protection, Washington Road lots are strictly Washington Road, new lot will need constructed right of way for access. I think we've talked that to death already. Subsurface wastewater disposal system. Looks like this note is superseded by the fact that we do have a perk test.
Yes, at the time I submitted this, Wayne hadn't gotten out there. But we now, and since got the report from Wayne Ludwig.
And the requirement is evidence of site suitability. We do not need a design. Water body protection, wetlands map is provided. Wetlands are not shown on map SD1, says the note. Groundwater, there's no development proposed in the sand and gravel aquifer identified in the 2018 comprehensive plan. Item 10, historical, archaeological, wildlife habitats, scenic areas, unique natural areas. The note here says no known sites, awaiting response from historic office. So we need a condition.
I have not received a response from them.
Okay. Financial and technical capacity, again, we're just cutting a lot. Homeowner association, there's no proposed roads, open space ownership. This one is. Oh, it's probably because it doesn't even exist in my book.
Open space subdivision?
Oh, no, sorry, 12.8. Skipped by it, 12.8.13.
Yeah.
There it is. Okay, there are no proposed open spaces. Right. This does not apply here. Okay. 12.6.1. Sorry, 12.6.2.1. Moving backwards. Plan submissions. Oh, I forgot about this. We have to do a third meeting. Correct?
No, but we did the same thing with filers where the board decided at that meeting.
It was close enough.
Do the final plan if you felt it's fine.
Got it.
which-
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is up to you. So once we go through 12.6, which is just, well, that and half of the next page, then I would suggest determining whether it's all approved at that point, or table or denied, and hold off on the final plan until you've made that decision. That makes sense. So go through the preliminary plan. But I have the final plan, just if needed, but let's just go through the preliminary plan items.
Great. That makes sense to me.
Because if we don't meet preliminary, then there's no sense to look at. the
Indeed.
plans.
Yeah.
All right. Application fee's been paid. Preliminary plan application form and all required attachment and maps are present. If applicable, a waiver request form. And the note here says request made for stormwater and erosion control plans, phosphorus control and wetland delineation. Because we're not developing this land here. Location map,
Wait, that's, what does it say request made for? We're wavering on that.
yes, this is,
Doesn't make sense. Waiver request for Okay, and that's the list of the waiver requests. Okay, I
Yeah,
get it,
Okay,
sorry.
no problem. All right, item 4, location maps. Including existing subdivisions, proposed roads, boundaries of zoning districts. Boundaries of zoning districts aren't shown on here.
That yes, I did do a location map, but I do not have the zoning districts. They do coincide, I think, if I understood Max correctly,
With,
with the easement line, but
yeah.
that's not noted as such
Fantastic,
on the
yeah.
line.
That's probably just a note to add.
Yep. Outline of proposed subdivision, that is all there. The note says lots don't show different zoning. Oh, Max is already on it. And split between the 2 districts, right? General information. We've already gone through all this, it's all present. And subdivision plan. This calls for a survey of the perimeter. Contour intervals.
We don't have any.
Location of slopes in excess of 25%. I'd be surprised if that's the case, but you never know. Number of acres, sand and gravel aquifer. That's, no, keeps going.
Yeah, I know, it's a long one.
Well, the vast majority of this does not apply. Sure, no one wants to pay you to go out there and shoot topo on there. Is there a way that we could come up with a map of the contours out there?
I
Out of some
could,
GIS or something?
I could use LiDAR,
Okay.
and bring in. They could be 1 foot, 2 foot. I mean, once I download that point cloud, I just tell it to extrapolate 1 foot, 2 foot, 5 foot, whatever interval you think would be. And if you don't have a specific interval in mind, I might try and pick one that doesn't muddy up the map or
It
muddies
says
it up.
10 feet or less, so.
I
let's
could
go 10
easily do
feet.
5, okay.
Okay. Item 7, statement indicating how solid waste will be handled. Oh, you have a statement? I missed that. No, here's the statement from Gartley and Dorsey.
I'll be honest, I don't remember
Oh.
what I made for a statement, but I did.
I honestly don't even remember that one. I think that was, I might have confused it with the septic waste.
Okay.
Okay.
So say I don't remember if I said anything to that effect.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
We're personally picking it up.
Yeah.
once a week.
Yeah.
All right, item 8, financial technical capacity to meet the requirements. Again, there's no construction there. Go ahead.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Do you need something with respect to refuse disposal? or
No,
if it's just a-
let's do a waiver for that one. Because the solid waste,
Because I think that was more construction related items, but I can confirm that.
I mean, I can address it in some manner if you just want me to, they're either gonna go to the dump or have a trash man come, assuming the lot gets developed, but
yeah,
right now,
actually,
there's no
let's do that.
development, so,
Provide the statement, yeah, let's do
Okay.
that, yeah.
all right.
Where was I? Any other data?
Oh.
Applicant is also seeking final approval. I don't think we're there.
Okay.
And yeah, just for the solid waste. The ordinance literally just says, provide a statement that says how solid waste will be disposed.
And that's because of the zoning, the zone, the district. If this is resident. rural,
No, because sometimes. Because when the subdivision law was all created, it was this idea that someone was taking this massive undeveloped parcel and turning it into a big old suburb.
Yeah.
And so one of the concerns was, well, who's picking up all the trash? Is that something the town's going to do? Is that a private thing that's being done?
Yeah.
Because this also applied to apartment buildings as well. So I think
Is it more development? Is that what you're saying?
that's
Or-
more development focused. So I think statement from Dorsey was more of just. And maybe I just asked you this in passing. It was, is,
They're not gonna leave trash everywhere.
yeah, they're just not gonna leave trash, so that might be it. So yeah, it's either just waiver or no development.
Um,
Well, should I, so
I'd say waiver, let's waiver it rather than another piece of paper.
I don't think it makes a difference to anybody.
I just wanna make sure if it needs to be on my list, I.
Yeah. Okay. Um. There's a bunch of different ways that we could approve this. And I think that. Without knowing what the applicant's intent is for the lot. It's sort of. We're relying on. People in the future interpreting rules the same way that we are interpreting them in this meeting. To control what is going to happen with the development of this lot, specifically related to the driveway and the entrance, right? And so if you come here 5 years from now, and there's 5 different people sitting on this board and they all view it a different way. Like relying on that 30-foot choke point, basically, to limit you to a single driveway. Like we could put a condition on it, but then you're gonna just come back and say, hey, wait, I wanna put in a high-rise apartment building back here. I don't know that approving it like that makes any sense. Like I don't really see, like, this is a weird, confusing situation. And I really sort of don't understand why there's the additional right of way, like. Because if you're only intending to put in a single family home back there, why the 80-foot right of way? You know what I mean? So I'd love to know what his intent is here.
Mhm.
There aren't really any showstoppers. Like, I think Eric's gonna vote against this anyway, but like, there really isn't. There isn't any like egregious violation of any of the clauses in the land use ordinance. It's just confusing and weird. So that being said, I'd sort of tend to,
I might vote for it if in fact they remove the additional right of way. And actually move that. Front, what we call the front lot line all the way across.
Mhm.
Then I would vote for it.
Oh,
But just, I think it's just,
Move the front lot line.
Well, so that this was at least 400 feet long.
yeah, well,
Yep.
yeah, I mean, just to have it go all the way across the lot, just to the side, so this becomes to here.
But is it to become compliant with the standard? or is it-
Because we comply with the standard, but it's just kind of weird, whole weird configuration, but this is more important. To remove that. And then a 30-foot easement all the way across, all the way to the back lot, and that kind of forces the hand that it's only gonna be only one building back there. I really worried that they're gonna somehow turn this thing into a major development, come back with a bigger development of 3 or 4 houses back there.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, no, in principle, nothing wrong with that, except of course, there's a lot of wetlands there. I mean, the whole thing is, it's kind of really funky.
Mhm.
Uh,
But that would, if they were to, so, to develop plans for future development, all of that would have to be scrutinized by DOT, right? Because now you're looking for an entrance for multifamily versus single family, DEP for wetland impacts, and then back to you folks for
Right.
multiple divisions if it happens.
Well,
within-
then the question, well, I'd say table it, because I think that the neighbors should know what his intent is. Because the neighbors may not want to do this whole jumping through hoops for this guy, if he plans on kind of creating a big development back there when that's not what they were thinking when they bought the property. you was talking about going back and talking to Timberlake and finding out what their thoughts on this, do they fully understand what this guy is doing? Do you still feel,
Strength spots on the future, for the property and what would you change? You would just, what would be the change you would do on this?
I think,
Because the 30-foot easement is automatically restricting the development of the back.
Well, and
right,
speaking to.
but then
to
it's
the-
got that, it's actually, I mean, it's 90 feet is what they're proposing. Yes, it stops 1 foot short of the road, which doesn't make any sense to me, except that somehow it's gonna be,
It's just woods
somehow,
and bush and green stuff. It's
Like-
right, but why, what do you need it for?
It's like,
If,
land for.
no, what do you need the right of way for if you don't need it?
Just-
If only put it as a 30-foot driveway, then what do you need to propose, why do you need the right of way?
if I can just jump in, Andy's been, not Andy,
Otherwise.
Johnny's been. great.
Otherwise, Stephen Mose takes care of this up against the
Yeah.
tracks, is that what happens?
Barbara,
Otherwise it becomes
yeah.
his property?
Yeah. Sorry, Johnny had his hand up a few times.
Max, you had mentioned earlier that you said you were gonna consult with some legal people in town about some issues.
Is
Is that my understanding?
I spoke with MMA already regarding the rear lot access.
Right.
Which is why there was a fun week with Dusty and I.
Right.
So I can certainly consult them. if
Come
there's
on, I'm
other
just wondering
questions.
what your opinion you think is everything above board here? As far as you see it and they see it? Or does it need more scrutiny? Because I wouldn't vote for it. I would vote to table it or abstain unless I got your opinion on it as far as the viability of the project.
My opinion was they're non-conforming lots. If you're adding the easement. Unless the road, which we differentiate between driveway and road.
Right.
If the road is actually being made, then we're good because it starts creating new road frontage.
Right.
But if it's a driveway or if it's just staying this easement, then it does take away the road frontage. Which is the opinion that MMA agreed to.
Oh.
But we've alleviated that concern by stopping that southerly easement short of Washington Road, correct?
By the foot, yes.
But
But yes,
the
I know
distance
what
is
you
a
mean, I
foot,
know what you.
But does
I know
it
what you
matter
mean.
if it's a foot or a mile? It stops short of Washington Road, which
Yes,
addresses
you're saying
the
it,
concern.
which is what we discussed. So everything you're saying is the same reaction I was kind of giving yesterday. as well.
So
Yes,
We've been
take it one
talking-
more time. I like that, Max. That was.
Which one is it? So. So the legal opinion, which was the opinion I believed when seeing this whole issue. Was that they're non-conforming lots.
Yep.
And we can't reduce the road frontage anymore. So the easement. If it's just gonna be a driveway, which we have our reason based on traffic and how many homes it serves. It's just gonna be this driveway easement, then it reduces the road frontage, it can't be done. Although Dusty has the way of getting around it, which is what's in front of you right now. If it's a street, if it's an actual 36-foot street. Which isn't proposed right now, if it's an actual road going through there, then yeah, it skips everything we've even talked about. They could have this full 90-foot right of way, as long as it's an actual road going along the whole property.
But it isn't, and I could, when you gave me your opinion, I agree with you, and that's why I made the revision to the plan. I'm in complete agreement with Max that we can't simply grant an easement here that adjoins Washington Road, otherwise we've violated the ordinance.
Right.
So in light of that, we've suggested to stop this easement short of Washington Road
Right.
to take care of that, because we aren't building a road.
Right.
What may or may not get constructed is not going to be a road, and therefore, for those reasons, we can't have this easement adjoin Washington Road, otherwise we're violating the ordinance. But as proposed, we are complying with the ordinance and the interpretation from MMA. Is that fair?
Yep.
Thank you.
So I have a question. So what happens if, what is the easement that's, that the town has, or the state, whatever it's a town road, say, on for road front, for road? I mean, it goes in people's private property.
Oh, like the actual public right of way?
Right. So if that's true, and they decide to widen the road, and they widen it by a foot, suddenly that road is now that road has access to the public road by the very fact that they've widened the road.
Right, well, DOT technically, but yeah.
Right.
If DOT then widened it by
1 foot,
foot,
then suddenly that would become a 90-foot right of way.
although I think. I mean, this already takes into account how much road DOT already owns.
Yeah.
So this is saying parcel that's technically belongs to,
Right, but DOT probably has a wider right of way.
if DOT decides to widen their right of way. Then, yeah, it starts getting into that issue that you just discussed, but. As it is right now. Yeah, they could, Dusty, Shane, whoever, could just have 1 foot sliver. And that would be fine. For an easement. And I know, again, we had the same back and forth yesterday.
Well, just for reference, Washington Road was laid out in 1789 and hasn't been changed since.
Yeah.
Right.
So
But Maine is changing rapidly right now.
understood.
You know,
Um,
Look what they've
and-
done
and-
in Route 1. I mean, everything, roads are being widened, so,
Being, I
So-
mean, Eric, your point is a great one. When I talked with Shane about this, I wasn't in favor of leaving it a foot away. And personally, I would have left 20, 30 feet so that because realistically, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna build in 20, 30 feet before you turn. His comment was if it only needs to be a foot or whatever that minimum distance is, that's what I would like to
it
provide.
sounds like you're in agreement with us then.
Well,
or
hold
me.
on, I'm sorry.
I'm in principle, yes, but this meets the standards of the ordinance, whether I personally like it or not.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So I personally, Eric, I see where you're coming from. I feel you completely.
Okay.
And again, that's my thing too. I don't agree with the 1 foot split thing. It's weirdly enough, not the first time I was asked about that in town, and I also had to check with him. But, so that's why when Dusty said it, I signed like, yes, technically you can. I'm sorry.
Max, is that an interpretation from you? Is that subject to change, the 1 foot? I mean, that is I think in legal parlance, it justifies the letter of the law, but it violates the spirit of the law.
Exactly.
So does this committee have any purview about looking at that and saying, yeah, you've got the letter of the law, but the intent, the spirit of it is, it doesn't pass the smell test.
I would say that falls under when you vote and you do have your interpretation. Something such as I think it's this case. 12.8.1, all subdivisions shall meet all applicable performance standards and requirements in the land use ordinance in addition to the following performance standards. It would be sort of a no vote because of that, since it's violates the rear lot standards. So that's what, but it's based on your interpretation, and again, we can table it if you want me to get another opinion on it.
Right.
or-
Well, I remember the AD Gray about what's, what standard, what is,
Mhm.
pleasant, and it was just an interpretive versus
Right.
in use, and who decide, who's the arbiter of that?
You
So
are.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, no, I hear you, but to your point, you're right. 1 foot back, that is legal. That's the letter of law, but the spirit of the
Right.
law, which you can't just dismiss that, I don't think. I mean, I would have a bad feeling about it. I'm struggling with that.
It's something. It's always a very rough talk to have because. You're right, if it is someone who found a loophole. You either change the ordinance so that someone doesn't do that loophole again. Or you accept it and try and do a case like what you're doing right now, saying,
Okay.
hey, look, we understand you can do it, but. Come on, are you really gonna do it like this?
This is the conversation I had before making this amendment. Just the interest of full disclosure. That said, part of the rationale for wanting to maintain this easement area is to, out of consideration for Mr. Longfellow, that Jane does not, would prefer not, and I'm sure you would prefer not, to see this driveway come down in your property if, I mean, I'm sure you don't want it at all. But understanding there's an easement there, if the lesser of evils is they could come in 20 or 30 feet off the road and then hook off of your property, would that not be less impactful to your parcel?
Yeah, it would be less impactful. I'm not sure that, I'm that concerned about that 30-foot stretch. That is just the property itself. It's basically a lot of this right here is not, you know, it's not extremely. Yeah,
Is
There's-
it wooded?
it's, so once you're going about halfway, it goes up a big rock and the big rock ledge, and it's on a ledge, and then it goes down into a very small valley. And I believe that is that right here. This strip is usable. I don't have any designs on it at the moment. Our living area is over here. It wouldn't be a 30-foot road. And again, I came here not knowing that I had that on my property, which is on me. It doesn't concern me greatly to have it there, just because I don't have much plans for it. If there were to be another building or something put on my property, it would be about here. So there's that, but I don't have any designs on it at the moment. So it's not a current, and again, it's already there, so there's not much I can do about it.
I mean, would a happy medium, if we were to go in 20, 30 feet, something more realistic, like how a driveway might be constructed, would you feel differently about 1 foot? I mean, I completely get your point about the 1 foot. I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm playing devil's advocate, arguing, well, yes, technically it applies in that, but I
You
understand,
moved
you know.
that 20 feet. Who does that belong to?
Well, this all belongs to them still.
So
It's
all-
just an easement would come up. I guess this is preliminary, so I'm gonna mark it up, but say we drew this easement terminating here as opposed to
Right.
here, right?
Still, it's property. We still can use it, cut trees or plant
Well,
it or
I'm
whatever.
saying this helps probably pass the straight face test, whereas a foot away, right? It's a, you know, I completely understand the point that you guys are making. That's why I'm saying realistically, this is, you know, if we drew something like that, I think it's reasonable to think if DOT approved this entrance here, you could come in 20, 30, 50 feet and then hook down and avoid this section of the easement and meander out through, which I think realistically, if a driveway were to be constructed, that's probably what would happen. You're not gonna come in and turn 90 degrees a foot from the road, right? It's just not gonna happen. DOT is gonna dictate, I think, that you have to be as perpendicular as possible for, I think it's 20 or 30 feet anyway with any entrance. So
Length of a car
even if
road.
you wanted to turn within that foot, DOT is not gonna allow you to do it, right? You're gonna have to come in and maintain
It's
perpendicularity to
on
the road.
paper. It's
Yeah.
not how people are gonna use it.
Yes. Yeah.
Build on it.
I appreciate his consideration and wanting to avoid, you know, having to go on my property. I'm not greatly concerned about it. But, and I appreciate all of your consideration and trying to protect my property and all this, so. I really appreciate that. But I'm not, if he had to do a road down there, I wouldn't squawk. basically,
So the only things people are talking about is possibly that bump out, moving the mystery line 20 feet.
Yep.
And Eric, you're saying this line. this
Well,
back-
extending that line across, I mean,
Yeah.
I think.
Other than that, is there any other big improvements that we would suggest?
Well, can we limit it to one, residence, one building? Or one? They can't be subdivided again? We allowed to do that?
Or can you,
I would have to get an opinion on that one.
or can you say without review?
Yeah.
Like I've seen that language on other subdivision plans where they say no lot shown on this plan can be further subdivided without subdivision review, further
right.
review. Meaning if they wanted to try and do that, they'd have to bring it back here, regardless if it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Yeah.
If that language is on in one of the conditions of approval, because I've gone through this in other towns where you've got a 20-year-old subdivision, a client calls me and says, hey, want to divide my lot in half, and I'll say, great, but you're gonna have to go back to the planning board because when it was approved, it says any future division of these lots requires review.
That would be fine for me.
Or
But that's
so
my,
does that hamper this lot if for some reason another lot, adjacent lot sold and someone came in and wanted to include this as part of this, you know, a part of a subdivision? Does that, our condition preclude
Well,
that kind
they
of?
would have to
future-
come back to the planning board anyway if they're gonna do a subdivision. Another adjoining lot.
Yeah, but if we've already said that this lot can only have one house. on it.
No, we just, we just changed that to the idea that it has to be subject to review. Whatever they do, there has
Is
to be,
it implied with everything?
no, not necessarily.
So
well, some attorneys take the stance that after 5 years,
do whatever.
So-
exactly, you
Right.
can divide a subdivision lot and doesn't, other attorneys take the position that once a subdivision, always a subdivision. So if that's a concern and you want to make sure this gets reviewed with any future division, I think you make that a condition of approval. That takes it away from a legal interpretation, and it's right on the face of the plan that if you want to divide in any of these lots that are on this plan in the future, you gotta come back and see us.
Right, I guess I don't. Problem with that.
Yeah, I've seen that, I've seen that on a lot of existing subdivision plans where they make that a requirement for that reason that. These things don't get swept under the rug, that you put it back under a microscope 10 years from now when there are 5 different people sitting here and they go through all the standards again. And
I know it's getting late, but let's have, can I just 2 other questions about your deed? There's in this deed, there's also a easement for a septic tank on your property. Was that rectified when they put in new leach field?
I'm not sure what that means. The septic,
There's a new,
Tank.
it says there was a proposed septic field. But
Yeah.
this is referring to a septic tank.
oh,
So-
And
I believe,
there's
I
an
do
existing-
remember something about that.
so
So
can,
do they share a septic tank and a septic field?
no, what it was is the septic tank here, you see that red square?
Mhm.
The tank is partially over the line, so the easement allows that tank that partially encroaches to maintain there. That's-
So that same tank still exists, and then they built a new septic field to go attached to it.
That's the new tank, when they
Right.
put the new field in.
Oh, that's a new tank.
Yes.
So they put a new tank on his property.
Well, no, at the time Shane owned it all. And then when we drew these division
Before I
lines, when it,
bought
came, yeah, when it came to the town to draw this division line,
Oh,
the way the town approved drawing this line, it had the line running through the septic tank, so that's why the language about the easement was included in the.
and I also note this doesn't show a well. It shows 2 wells on your property on Longfellow, but no well on the Timberlake.
I'm not sure where the well serving that house is.
Who did the survey?
I did.
Oh, you couldn't find the well?
I wasn't, yeah, I'm not sure where it was. We locate what's obvious and what we find and.
I believe this is an old capped well. I believe it's inactive, and this one is the one I use. Yeah.
Sometimes there was a period of time where the wellheads were actually buried.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're in a basement. So, I mean, yes, we try our darndest to find these things and identify them, but we don't always find all these.
so Shane doesn't know where that, doesn't know where that well is either.
I can't say whether he knows or not. If he does, we weren't made aware of the location and that's why it's not shown.
Okay.
Eric, if you're all set, I can take the deed back.
Oh, sure. All right. I marked it up. Sorry.
I got some white out.
I didn't know that was an original or, well,
No worries.
your original deed.
Well, I think that there's certainly a need to have a final meeting. To go through some of these unanswered questions. I'm inclined to move to table this. I think we've kind of got our list of problems made pretty small at this point. The plan for the driveway. A couple of missing documents.
Contours,
Yeah,
the notes about the zoning district.
Yeah.
So am I, and I'm not this, it's a question, but am I reading between the lines in that for obvious reasons, the foot doesn't feel good, but if it were something more realistic, like
Yeah.
a 20 or
Yeah.
30 feet, that might ease some of the concerns.
It seems like it's a no loss change to the, to
Agreed.
the applicant, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would agree.
All right, I don't
Yeah.
think there's any issues with any of the waivers that you've asked for.
And this
Yeah.
here, is this something that is a deal breaker in your mind?
It's not a deal breaker. I mean, I just like to, you know, if to make it conform as much as possible to the standards would be ideal. So it doesn't quite conform, because I don't agree. I agree. This is a sideline, that's front line.
Okay, so that 400, at a minimum, you'd prefer to see this, if, that takes that question away, that
Right.
this is front line or no, this is
Right.
just front line. So if that at a minimum, that dimension 400, but ideally, if agreeable,
Right.
running that all the way to the
Except
side.
the back lots in the rural district.
But isn't the front, it has to, this front line has to meet the frontage of the front lot, or is it the rear lot? Because they are in two different districts, so,
Oh,
yeah, so which.
does the
which-
rural
I-
have more than 400
No, it's
feet?
less,
No,
it's
rural
only
has
200.
200 feet. Route 1 Commercial A has 400.
Oh,
So which-
well, let's go.
Yeah, so which would
Let's
this,
answer that question.
Yeah,
Well,
because
because
that-
we'll never remember it.
I-
This was in 12.6, right? No,
1032, right?
But do we,
1032.
do we know
yes.
the whole, the back lot is?
That is entirely rural district.
Oh,
If,
Yeah.
well,
all right.
because the CMP line is divided between rural and Route 1 Commercial,
Okay,
at
1030,
least for the northern part, sorry.
1032.4, the portion of the new rear lot which abuts the rear lot line of the front lot shall extend a minimum length equal to the minimum front road frontage required for the land use district in which it is located.
Oh, well, that's being this lot, right? So it only requires
200
200
feet.
feet.
All right, well, then that's not an issue then.
Not an issue.
The reason I asked, because these points are established. So I'm sure in Jane's mind, if we didn't have to go back out and adjust those, that would be preferable. But if it's something that had to be done, I'm sure.
No,
it
no,
would.
it doesn't have to be done. If it meets the code, then it's fine.
200, so we think we're
Okay.
good there. But so this would be the noteworthy change, which I would fully expect there won't be any issue.
All right,
So there was
then-
the historical thing and then did we already decide that we were gonna waive the monuments on the rear lot?
I don't think anybody had any objection to waiving the monuments requirement because there's adequate data. There's surveys of the abutting properties that have all the survey data on it.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have a pin out there,
There may be, I
There
can't
might-
say
right.
one way or the
but
other.
the only way to find it is to go out and survey it. Right, yeah. So I don't think we have any big objections, but I think the thing to do is to move to table this.
I agree.
If you want to.
So what will that mean next time we go, because you haven't approved a preliminary plan, right? So,
Do we have to approve the?
well, that's what I'm
preliminary
at. I don't
You'd
know.
have to approve a preliminary plan to do the final plan, because the preliminary plan is you saying, yeah, this looks good, make sure you address the final few items, and then we'll approve the final.
Right.
The reason filers was a preliminary and final all in the same night was because it wasn't really that controversial. It was these two lots right on the front. Everything was straightforward, there were no dimensional issues. It was the opposite of this parcel.
So does that mean that we should ask that the preliminary is approved with the idea that we're gonna make the revisions necessary for the final, or do we just make these revisions and next time they
You can,
approve the preliminary and final and maybe in one?
It seems like a convoluted way to do it. Why don't we just vote to approve it with the conditions that we've all just agreed on?
Okay.
can be done.
A procedural question?
Yep.
I'm inclined to wait for what you said you're gonna lean out some of those legal things. Can I abstain or vote to table it? If we could go around, if I don't feel comfortable,
We're gonna have another meeting
so.
on this no matter what.
Right. So
So like,
Right, sorry.
I just don't wanna. I guess I don't wanna vote. I mean, there's a few dangling participles out there. And you mentioned it, Max, you wanted to get more of a legal,
Mm.
opinion versus thing, but I just don't want to not vote. There's no
Right.
deal breakers in here for me, but on the same token, I do have some reservations.
So no, I didn't say I wanted to personally go out and get legal opinion.
Right.
My thing was, did anyone here have any specific item that needed a legal question? That was what I said, or what I meant to say at least. So I don't have anything that holds this up. It's always the planning board's decision on what you want to do.
Right.
It is the two decisions of either you table it and then the intent next month might be preliminary and final plan. Or it's what I think was about to be motioned of approve the preliminary and then final plan has to be approved with all the changes that you have discussed.
Do we have other stuff coming in front of the board next month?
I don't have anything on
Okay.
my radar.
So well, I'm ready to, move on the pre-application, the
Preliminary.
preliminary plan, that's the word I'm looking for. The pre-plan, why table it?
I'm
Because you
always
wanna
trying
see
to
it?
table it, but and just approve it in the next meeting.
Is that because you want to see it? Is that,
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see what they, I want to hear, but it goes back and see what Shane has to say about all this.
There. If we don't think there's a big issue with doing preliminary and final review next meeting, I don't have any issue as the applicant saying table it and. What I'd hate to see happen is to only get preliminary approval and have to drag out another month for final, but it sounds like we're all but there, so.
If we find a problem and it has to go for another meeting, it doesn't really matter if we're calling that the preliminary meeting or the final meeting.
Yeah.
So it's sort of all the same.
Yep.
To me.
except that the client's paying for more time. And more, yeah.
That's good for me though, right?
That's good for you.
No.
Depends how busy you
Yeah, no,
are.
too busy, quite frankly. If you're more comfortable with I don't have any.
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, it makes no difference to me. I mean, I think we're close enough on this, aside from the fact that we're gonna have to explain it all to John when he comes to the next meeting. But,
I might offer to let John I might just talk to John outside of the. Just during my business hours and say, all right, John, I need you to sit down. This is a very.
yeah, I don't see the problem in tabling it and then doing the preliminary and final approval in the next meeting. Yeah, it's the same.
We've done that before. We've done that, haven't we, man?
We did that for Heidi Simmons.
Yes, we've done
Yeah.
that before.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not like it's unprecedented.
Yeah. All right, so I'll move to table it.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
They got it, so you're fine.
Well, thank you all for your time and patience. I know this one was less than straightforward,
In the old
but
days, though,
I
we had
appreciate
to
the time.
explain when we post up, we had to walk on by.
Really?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Max made me explain
That's all
one
right.
vote
I
I
did the-
had years ago.
Thank you.
yes,
Thank you.
pleasure meeting you.
I think this is what
Steve,
planning board follows.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, at the time,
If you
I-
don't think it's
yeah.
not a mistake.
I voted
By the way,
against it, and then
My wife
Max
is on,
made me
she's
explain
watching
it.
live,
Nothing later
she
found out
said
was
their
unwrong.
well is in their front yard.
He had no
It
right
was
to-
their-
Ah,
They
perfect.
There was, oh, they drilled their own
But
well.
I-
They did, or I think Shane may have.
Okay,
drilled it
folks,
before they
so,
purchased it.
Yeah.
But
thank you
Max-
for coming.
Hey,
We're not done. We got meeting minutes to approve.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Hopefully it will be very quickly, but
Approve? As a bunch?
you may certainly do that. That is an option to just approve it the bunch, but I'm just saying that for your sake. You don't have to stick around. for
Thank
the
you
next
all.
five
Sure,
minutes.
Thank you. I read the meeting minutes and I didn't have any comments.
I read them, there's nothing, nothing.
Oh, wonderful.
They're all.
All good.
Fantastic. I'll move to accept all the minutes.
Too, like the illustrations.
I'll move to accept all the meeting minutes that were in the pile. I don't know the dates. What were the dates?
February, March, May, and wasn't there a fourth one?
There were 2 in March.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
we had
Yes,
the workshop.
so.
March and March.
There's one I didn't attend, so I can't vote on that, correct?
You wanna break it out?
You're allowed to attend, you're allowed to vote on once you don't attend. That's actually,
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
you're allowed to. do so.
Okay, well.
February, March and May, yeah.
All right. I'll move to accept them as proposed.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yee-hee.
I-
All right. There we go.